That piece makes me so happy. Good morning and welcome, friends. Today and next Sunday, September 5th, will be the last 2 Sundays I'll lead you in singing Giving Voice to the Spirit. Beginning September 12th, some of you will enter the sanctuary and be present here with us. It's too soon for us to sing together live in the room, and so for now, we'll celebrate and embrace the time we've had together singing in community all these years. The songs and the tradition are part of us now. The practice of giving voice has served us in so many ways. Together we've marked the turning of the seasons, the arc of our church year, the life passages of our members. We have lamented and celebrated the larger interconnected web of which we are a part. We've marked important and unexpected events and passages, and we have continuously sung out for justice and mercy many a morning for the oppressed and marginalized in our communities and for our planet. There has always been a place for singing and lending our voices on behalf of equity, justice, and freedom, and for planet Earth, our home, which is in trouble. But here we are now, so I hope you'll join me in singing this morning. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Go yonder, and gather the people. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the refugees they will find home again. Tell all the people that peace is come. Go yonder, and gather the people. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell all the nations their weapons aren't needed. Tell all the people that peace is come. Go yonder, and gather the people. Tell all the people that peace is come. Tell every person their lives are worth fighting for. Tell all the people that peace is come. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of love. You are the face of hope. I hold you in my heart. You are a light for me. You are the face of hope. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. The revolution has come. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. When we stand up, we've already won. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. The revolution has come. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive.
Good morning and welcome everyone to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We come together in this community of youth, adults, and children to grow our souls and serve the world. I'm Dana Boyle. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. Whether you're attending for the first time or the 100th, you're warmly invited to join us for Cyber Social Hour at 11:15. It's really more like 30 minutes of facilitated conversation and connection. We'd be glad to have you, and we'll put the Zoom link for this event in the chat box. Reverend Roger will facilitate the final circle round afternoon gathering today at 4 p.m. There are still available spots if you'd like to sign up on Breeze or email Reverend Roger. We are ending these because of plans in September for more in-person events. I also warmly invite you to sign up for one of several opportunities to chat with Roger. These 90-minute sessions will give you a chance to meet Roger and share about our church. This will also help him get more deeply acquainted with our church and the people that are at the heart of it. There are Zoom and in-person options, including a Zoom option at 12:15 p.m. today. Service participants today include Aaron Scott, Anna Garris, Amy Peterson-Derrick, and Reverend Jack Gate. Music participants include the WBUC Choir and Carol Coette. Welcome to our church.
Come in. Come into this space, which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this space where we can heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this space where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this space. Together we make it a holy space.
I have been awakened many times in my life, and without exception, these awakenings are moments of grace. They are a gift from beyond. Someone or something pierces the veil of my ignorance, my indifference, my self-absorption, and nudges me awake. I remember a national park ranger at the Hoh Rainforest in Washington State when I was 9 years old. He woke me up to the incredible beauty, intricacy, strength, and fragility of the natural world. Ranger David Edsel, 50 years later, I still remember his name. Well, he was a science teacher, and he spent his summers doing ranger interpretation at the rainforest. His words contained such reverence and beauty that they left us spellbound. All of these years later, his words are still a foundation of how I see the world, how I try to live my life. I try to remember his words when I need to wake up again to the beauty and the fragility of nature. I have no idea what faith Ranger Edsel had, but I know that I am a Unitarian Universalist today, partly because of him. Let's light our chalice, a symbol of our faith, a faith that keeps calling us to worship, to wake up. And I invite you now to join in our unison opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. And now, I invite you to join wherever you are in singing our opening hymn, All This Joy.
All this joy
morning. This morning's story is called Kisa Gotmi and the Mustard Seed. Long ago, there was a young mother who had a 2-year-old son. He delighted her and she loved him deeply. She loved everything about her baby, his laughter, his cries, his grasping fingers and toes. But one day, her baby grew sick and died. Kisa was overwhelmed by sadness. She bundled the baby in warm blankets and held him tightly to her chest. Heavy with grief, she stumbled from house to house, begging for medicine that would bring him back to life. But instead of helping, people mocked her. How can a person be brought back to life? They jeered. Hours later, Kisa stood in the street, wretched and sobbing. A kind person led her to the monastery where she found the Buddha teaching. From the edge of the crowd, Kisa shouted, "Teacher, teacher, please, please, my son needs your medicine." The crowd made way for Kisa to reach the Buddha. As she stood before him, he observed Kisa and her son in her arms. "You did well to bring him here for medicine, Gautami," said the Buddha. "Here you will find the help you need. But there is one ingredient that I lack for the medicine that you need. You must return to the city and find me a single mustard seed and bring it to me. Most important of all," said the Buddha, "the mustard seed must be from a family in which no one has died. Go now, make the rounds of the city and ask at every home, bring me back just one mustard seed from such a family." At the very first house Kisa stopped, an old woman answered. She easily gave Kisa a mustard seed. But just as she received the mustard seed in her hand, she remembered the Buddha's further instructions. "Oh, pardon me," she said, "but before I take this, I must ask you, has anyone in this family recently died?" The old woman's head lowered, and she fell silent. When she raised her face, there were tears in her eyes. "I am sorry to say that the answer is yes," replied the old woman. "My dear husband died just 6 months ago." "I am so sorry," said Kisa Gotami. "Thank you for your kindness, but I cannot take this seed." A few months later, she knocked at the door of a house with children running out to play. A young woman saw Kisa and came to greet her. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I have been sent to find special medicine for my son. I'm looking for a single mustard seed from a household in which no one has died," said Kisa. "We cannot help you. I am so sorry. We lost our mother 2 years ago," stated the young woman quietly. "For many months, I was so unhappy, I didn't know how to go on." One of the boys reached up to hold her hand. She clasped his little fingers and continued, "But I knew I had to help my father take care of my brothers and sisters. That's what my mother would have wanted. I'm sorry we have no special mustard seed for you." And so Kisa continued to the next house, and then another, and another, asking for a single mustard seed. But always someone had lost a beloved brother or sister or grandparent or aunt or cousin or mother or father. The list grew longer and longer. After a time, nightfall came. Kisa sat down, resting against a tree. She gazed down at her son in her arms. Studying him closely, she felt a gradual change in herself. Not a single household she had visited today lived untouched by death's sad hand. Many had suffered as she did. She was not alone. And somehow, with these thoughts, her grief lightened just a bit, and she returned home. The next day, at first light, Kisa readied her son for his funeral. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she wrapped him in clean cloth and said farewell. After the funeral, Kisa went back to the monastery to speak with the Buddha. He asked, Go to me, did you find and bring me a tiny grain of mustard seed? No, teacher. I am done looking for the mustard seed. I know that in the whole city, in the whole world, there is not one family, not one person free from the certainty of death. It is the way of all living things. We must at some time leave one another. I felt terribly alone in my grief, but I know now that there are many others who have lost what they most cherished. We must help each other as you have helped me. Kisa Go to Me became a very wise and compassionate woman. From her experience, she was able to go on to comfort many, many others in her lifetime.
I invite you now into a time of stillness and meditation. Bring all of yourselves to the sacred moment, body, mind, emotions, spirit. Give your attention for a moment to those things in your life that fill you with joy and gratitude. For some of us on this particular Sunday morning, this comes easy. For others whose hearts are burdened or breaking this morning, it's not so easy. For some of us, perhaps nothing but hints of joy or gratitude will get past the difficulty we're feeling at this very moment. If this is you, please be gentle with yourself. In this faith, we affirm that all are connected. Even in the season of physical distancing, we lovingly hold in our hearts those among us and beyond us who are hurting or scared or lonely or sick or grieving. This is part of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. So in this spirit, I invite those who are able to hold others this morning to draw those who are suffering into your circle of loving kindness. Hold them in your hearts. For those who need to be held this morning, picture the people gathered in this virtual space, lovingly holding you in their hearts. If you feel moved, I invite you to say the name or names silently or out loud of those you are especially holding in your hearts this morning. Let's hold a moment of shared silence together. Amen.
Our offering today supports the programs, Sunday services, arts, education, and public witness of our congregation, as well as our commitment to courage, reverence, and compassion. Please be generous.
We have two readings this morning. The first is Denise Levertov's poem, Candles in Babylon. Through the midnight streets of Babylon, between the steel towers of their arsenals, between the torture castles with no windows, we race by barefoot, holding tight our candles, trying to shield the shivering flames, crying, "Sleepers, awake!" Hoping the rhyme's promise was true, that we may return from this place of terror home to a calm dawn and the work we had just begun. And the second reading is an excerpt from John Green's The Anthropocene Review. Immunity is not primarily a personal experience, but a collective one. What I really want is not to be personally immune from COVID-19. I want to be able to share spaces without risking spreading the disease or overwhelming the healthcare system or harming the vulnerable. I want to visit with friends, to be together. In her brilliant book on immunity, Eula Biss writes, "Immunity is a public space, and God, do I miss public spaces." The Wikipedia entry for smallpox begins, "Smallpox was an infectious disease." Was. To situate these horrors in the past tense, immunity must be collective. How will we ever recover from the loss and separation and heartbreak of this pandemic? Perhaps only the same way we achieve immunity, by sharing it.
Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth revealed to me. Open my eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Love of my life, I am crying, I am not dying, I am dancing along in the madness. There is no sadness, only a song of the soul, and must sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. Why don't you sing this song? Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time? What do you do for your living? Are you forgiving, giving shelter? Follow your heart, love will find you, truth will unbind you. Sing out a song of the soul. Come to your life like a warrior, nothing will bore you, you can be happy. Let the
I recently listened to a podcast where the host and guest were celebrating the work of Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. She wrote the book When Things Fell Apart. Initially, I thought, what an appropriate book to read during a pandemic. But the more I thought about it, when are things not falling apart? I don't want to sound too cynical, but our world is filled with suffering. We don't always see it, we don't always know about it, whether it's happening across the street in that home where everyone looks so happy, or across the ocean. Wars and feuds, torture, oppression, and discontent. The amount of suffering in the world at any moment would bowl us over if we were actually aware of it all. Our nervous system would shut down and we would probably become catatonic. These last 18 months have been scary and full of too much suffering to process sometimes. And at the same time, there's been a sense of community, that we're all in this together. And not just here in this church or in Minnesota, or even in the US, but globally. We've heard about the way that COVID has touched many parts of our world: Italy, South Africa, Brazil, India. We've also heard about the incredibly deep disparity between the wealthy countries with easy access to vaccines and poor countries lagging far behind. I recently found myself talking about being past the pandemic and instantly regretted it. It didn't sit well with me and I wasn't sure why. And then I encountered this excerpt from John Green that Roger just read. In it, he argues persuasively that immunity needs to be a collective experience, not just a personal one. He was actually writing about immunity in the context of smallpox, but the implications for our current moment are crystal clear. He says that smallpox was an infectious disease, past tense. The world worked together and shared their immunity. They collaborated. They built a communal trust. And since COVID affected the whole world, achieving global immunity might also take years. The smallpox vaccine was discovered around 1796, and it wasn't eradicated until 1977, more than 180 years later. A long time in the making, but it was one of the most important moments in the world of public health. But it also had some shadow sides and an unequal distribution of vaccines and hence eradication, which shouldn't surprise any of us. Different continents eradicated the smallpox virus in different decades, starting with North America in 1952 and ending with Africa 25 years later. 25 years. Just pin that historical note for later. Then, 3 years after smallpox was declared eradicated, we received reports about the first cases of AIDS. I'm not saying this to scare you or to make you think that we'll live in perpetual pandemic or anxiety, but it does shed a new light on Pema Chodron's book. The title is When Things Fall Apart, not if, but when. In it, she says, curiously enough, if we primarily try to shield ourselves from this discomfort, we suffer. We think that protecting ourselves from suffering, we are being kind to ourselves. The truth is, we are becoming more fearful, more hardened, and more alienated. We are seeing ourselves as being separated from the whole. This separateness becomes like a prison for us, a prison that restricts us to our personal hopes and fears, and to caring only for the people nearest to us. This concept hit me this week like a ton of bricks. I had been hearing about the news in Afghanistan, but I just couldn't bring myself to really stop and actually see the suffering and anguish. Maybe I felt defensive since I had supported a seemingly overdue exit to a 20-year war. Or maybe it's a bit of catastrophe fatigue. But I just couldn't add another thing to my plate. And then a few of you emailed me about it, wondering about ways the church community could support Afghani refugees. Even then, it still didn't quite get to my front burner because we're just so busy right now here at the church, navigating multiple staff transitions and figuring out how to regather and reopen in safe, accessible, beautiful ways. I felt a little overwhelmed and wanted Afghanistan to just be on the back burner for a minute, right? Couldn't this coup in Afghanistan wait for a more convenient time? But obviously that's not how life goes. Kisa Gotami learned the same truth in the story Amy just shared with us. She realized that the inconvenience of death had touched her whole community. In her book about immunity, Eula Biss first admits that she wanted to immunize or inoculate her children against every possible hardship. But we all know, no matter how much we strive, we aren't immune to death and wars and suffering. Once she realized that immunity from suffering wasn't possible, she analyzed the importance of immunizing her children against pretty specific and big preventable diseases. She seems to point to the reality that acts of deep self-care also become acts of community care. And she describes immunity as communal trust. If I'm being honest though, I feel a shortage of communal trust right now. And when we're feeling a lack of trust or feeling particularly vulnerable, sometimes we lash out at real or imagined scapegoats. I was talking with someone the other day who used the phrase diseased immigrants, and it really stuck in my craw. I don't know where the phrase came from, but I assume it came from certain politicians or media outlets that often utilize moments of fear and vulnerability to stoke a fire against the other, the immigrant, the queer, or the refugee. Throughout history, we've been accustomed to people referring to various diseases like Ebola or H1N1 with racist and xenophobic nicknames. This hurtful reality doesn't surprise me, but it angers me. Even the, quote, Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 wasn't really from Spain. World War I was happening at the time, and none of the countries actively fighting in the war were willing to publish the gory details of the pandemic's damage to their citizens. Spain was a neutral country in the war and hence had no reason not to publish their fatality numbers. Because of the censorship from other countries, many people only saw the flu cases in Spain and mistakenly thought it originated there, hence the name Spanish flu. But at the same time, the Spanish called it the French flu because they thought it came from France. See, we often look for a scapegoat, and usually that desire to scapegoat others comes from the people who gain politically from the othering of a whole class of people, of our neighbors. So how do we resist that othering? How do we view our collective humanity and our collective immunity as a communal trust? Just this month, we cooperated internationally for the Olympics and the Paralympics. But can we cooperate to fight viruses, to inoculate and eradicate, to house refugees? The cycles of life and death, of joy and sorrow, continue to turn slowly and steadily. We need to learn that we just simply can't do it alone. We need each other's help. We all have different strengths, passions, and capacities. Maybe I don't have the capacity to house an Afghani refugee right now, but maybe one of you does. On Friday, our governor here in Minnesota committed to housing 70 refugee families from Afghanistan. What an incredible opportunity for us. You know, one of the kindest and most hospitable people I've ever met is a pharmacist named Tamim. He lives in Maple Grove and he serves as the occasional leader of the mosque in Plymouth. He came to Minnesota as a refugee from Afghanistan in the early 1980s. If you are a person who can help support refugees right now, please stay plugged in and connected. What a privilege it would be to meet the next Tamim. Eula Biss also describes immunity as a public space. And just like John Green in the reading, I really miss public spaces. Not even the individual people necessarily, but the act of trusting in a certain community enough to be present and interact, to enjoy some art or music, to cheer on athletes, to worship together. One of my most missed and most cherished activities is reading and writing in coffee shops and libraries. I don't even need to engage the people around me to enjoy the presence of a gathered community. During these last 18 months, I've actually found myself on multiple occasions playing a soundtrack of coffee shop sounds just to soothe my socially isolated spirit. Just the noise of people chattering and grinding espresso, steaming milk and clinking ceramics. It helps me feel normal and it helps me to focus. And all of this talk of what immunity is makes me wonder what immunity could be. What if it could be a system where fewer people live in fear of the current virus, but also fewer people live in fear of poverty and of racism and of all the other bigotries and social ills of our current society? Sometimes I wonder if people care enough about their unvaccinated neighbors to care about them even after they get vaccinated. I've been hearing a lot of people express deep anger at unvaccinated folks, and I found myself there too. But fortunately, I've had some good thought partners to dig a little deeper. One woman, a person of color, helped me understand that my true beef was not with the unvaccinated, but actually with the people not taking the pandemic seriously. There are many people who are justifiably hesitant about vaccines. For example, African Americans who know the history of the Tuskegee experiment, when our government abused and mistreated Black men by infecting them with syphilis. These experiments started in 1932 and lasted for 40 years, all the way until 1972, 20 years after smallpox was eradicated in the US. There are many unvaccinated people who are still taking the pandemic very seriously, and many vaccinated people not taking it seriously at all. And on the flip side, what an incredible privilege to be more afraid of the vaccine than of the virus. Living in one of the wealthiest countries with incredible advantages in our healthcare system, while many other billions around the world do not have access to the vaccine or strong and effective healthcare systems. 4 months ago, Indian writer Arundhati Roy wrote a powerful essay about the horrific situation in India. While some were arguing that India should be isolated or sealed off, she said, "No, we can't be isolated. We need help." Which brings me back to Pema Chodron. When we see ourselves as separate from the whole community, we become more fearful, more hardened, and more alienated. This is why we're focusing this month on the theme of interdependence. How can we support each other so that the load is less heavy? Another thought partner of mine this week was a community organizer from Brooklyn named Marcella, who was doing her best to advocate for people to get vaccinated. She wasn't just some stranger providing paternalistic advice to strangers. She was conversing with people with whom she already had a relationship. The week before she chatted about vaccines, she had visited these same people and helped connect them to their local food pantry. She cared about them beforehand and in other ways. See, I think one of my biggest concerns is that some people with a lot of privilege are going to do their best to get all their neighbors vaccinated and then go back to ignoring them or ignoring their other challenges. Or once their closest neighbors and friends get vaccinated, they'll just seal up their borders and ignore those outside the borders. How do we widen the circle of concern instead? Before this pandemic, our congregation was working on racial justice and social justice issues. And we can't let something small or even something epic get in the way of continuing that work. And we are continuing it with your help. We have been thinking long and hard about the ways we want to regather and be open, and we're doing that work through a lens of equity and equal access, prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable. How do we center the work of the church right now on our youth and our families? What would it look like globally if Africa wasn't the last continent to eradicate COVID? What if, instead of referring to fellow human beings as diseased immigrants, we treated them as family and supported them gladly? These last 18 months have been hard. As Denise Levertov said, through the midnight streets of Babylon, between the steel towers of their arsenals, between the torture castles with no windows, we race by barefoot, holding tight our candles, trying to shield the shivering flames, crying, "Sleepers, awake!" hoping the rhyme's promise was true, that we may return from this place of terror, home to a calm dawn, and the work we had just begun. We may return from this place of terror. We may wake up to a calm dawn. But how can we be sure to widen the circle of concern as we settle into a new home? Let's continue and let's deepen the work that we've already begun. Let's pause for a moment of silence. These final words from John O'Donohue. Beauty is not all brightness. In the shadowlands of pain and despair, we find slow, dark beauty. They seem to be at work with each other. Beauty is never one-dimensional or one-sided. This is why, even in awful circumstances, we can still meet beauty. A simple instance of this is fire. Though it may be causing huge destruction in itself, as dance and shape and color of flame, fire can be beautiful. In human confusion and brokenness, there is often a slow beauty present and at work. Please join me in our final hymn, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People."
Harvey Milk was the first openly gay man to be elected to a public office in San Francisco on the Board of Supervisors. He was assassinated by a former supervisor in 1978, along with the mayor. And Holly Near wrote this song after that assassination. Please join me. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are all in this together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us. Go in peace.
Friends, thank you for joining us this morning and bearing with us through technical difficulties. All are welcome to join Cyber Social Hour at 11:15 today. The link is in the chat box. Don't forget to mark your calendars for water communion on September 12th. The service will be live streamed and will also include an opportunity for in-person attendance. Please be sure to pre-register as early as possible. If gathering in the building is what your spirit needs, please attend the final Circle Around gathering today at 4 p.m. And if you'd like to attend one of the special opportunities to chat with Roger, please register online or email him so he knows to expect you. The next one's happening today on Zoom at 12:15, right after Cyber Social Hour. For now, we extinguish our chalices, but not the love and light and warmth that they symbolize. Be well, friends, stay well, and farewell. Amen.
So